In this episode, the good cabin sole work continues, and I even refine some of my techniques that improves things. It's quite a mission doing it, I must admit. It's definitely not a quick and easy job. What I'm doing here is I'm just getting the one with the least amount of blemishes. I'm probably sure my mother thinks that I was a difficult child. I've definitely gained experience with the panels I've already done. So the next thing is to trim up all of the hardwood to the shape of the plywood. Well, here it is, all clamped up. It's quite a mission doing it, I must admit. It's definitely not a quick and easy job. Let's see how that looks in the morning. What I'm doing here is, with this white beech being a natural timber product, the grain differs on each surface, so I'm just getting the one with the least amount of blemishes so that it's as consistently white as I can possibly find. Then I mark the surface so that I know which one is the one that I want to be up. These have all got to be rough sanded, as you saw me doing before, and the rosewood also gets a little sand, then a quick wipe down with a damp sponge and mix up some epoxy, and away we go. So here's another panel ready to go. So I'll just mark that beech on the end so that I know. Then I can sand all of these and make a start.
I'm holding on, if almost gone. Someday I know I'll finally make it through the gates. Just have to wait it to me, there's no maybe. There's only time for dreams even greater. I hear the call, and I close my eyes to see even clearer. I see it all.
I actually think I might be getting the hang of this.
If we keep our faith, if we keep our faith.
So just to explain regarding this white beech, it's actually classified in some books and by some boat builders as a difficult timber, which I got a chuckle about when I was reading that in my Boatcraft Marine book. It sort of reminded me that I'm probably sure my mother thinks that I was a difficult child and you know, everything can be worked with, right? Because it's a timber that has quite a high content of natural oils which give a sort of greasy feeling to it, which it does actually, feeling it, it's actually quite nice, but it's got like a greasy feel to it, and so that can cause a problem when it comes to gluing it to whatever. So the book I've got explains a couple of ways that you can overcome that, one of which is to put grooves in the timber, and the other is to use a very, very coarse grade abrasive paper to pretty much do the same thing, put grooves in the timber where you want it to be glued. Because this is very, very small in little strips like this, obviously you couldn't really put grooves in it, practically speaking, but of course I can sand it. So I'm using 60 grit abrasive paper, and as you saw in a prior demonstration, that's bonding to the rosewood and actually breaking the white beech rather than breaking at where it's glued to the rosewood. So that's a very, very good test and indicator. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm using the abrasive paper, nice coarse run to get that roughened up, and soon after getting some epoxy glue on it. And that's the other thing to explain. Pretty much be ready to glue straight after that you've actually sanded it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm very close to mixing up a pot of epoxy with the preservative, which thins it out a bit and helps the epoxy be wicked into the grain. So that's part of the process here. I sand up the rosewood, sand and roughen up the white beech, sand up the panel, mix up some epoxy, and away I go. This is fairly exciting. This is the largest panel and somewhat the most complicated one, not only for cutting up the ply, as I explained in a prior video, but also because I'm going to be able to lay up, if I'm tricky and get away with it, all of this rosewood in one go. And so for that reason, the pressure's going to be on a little bit. I've definitely gained experience with the panels I've already done, and I am feeling comfortable now putting these panels together. I was quite anxious before. Now I feel like I kind of know what I'm doing. I do feel like I've got enough experience that I feel comfortable now, and that's a much better feeling. So into it. Galley panel next.
Sometimes I'm like a whisper in a riot, but I grow stronger, keep believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Still holding tight through every fright, 'cause sometimes I can see through the echo of every day, always the same, until you take a step and let go. You told me that the shade's turning brighter, I don't know how. You showed me every heart is a fighter.
So to explain the next thing that I need to do with this cabin sole, now that the rosewood and white beech has been laminated on, and I've got to say I'm very happy with the result. So the next thing is to trim up all of the hardwood to the shape of the plywood. So what I'm going to be doing with that is a range of things. Initially, I'm going to use the circular saw to get the cuts on the straight edges all to the same outline shape, where all of the little indentations and accommodations for cleats and stuff are, I'm going to use the small trimmer with a very small cutter blade, and that should give me a nice small radius corner in all of those spots. And then after that, I will get the belt sander and start cleaning up the face of them, and that I'm really looking forward to. I've just done that first cut, and that one is very much the test one to see how, with the tools that I'm using, it gives me a nice clean cut on the solid timber on top. So I'll turn this over and I'll have a look, but just before I do, I'll get the camera and show you. What I did was I've measured off for that fence to be just 0.5 millimeter off of the plywood, just to give me something to work with to sand should the need be, and that really has come up perfect, so I'm happy with that. So there you go, I could not be happier with that. That is a nice clean cut on that edge. That really is spot on. A very sharp cut, as I'm sure you can see there, and I can now press on with all of these panels and get them trimmed up.
I know that we can go higher if we keep our faith, if we keep our faith. Sometimes I'm like a whisper in a riot, but I grow stronger, keep believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. There's only time for dreams, even I hear the call, and I close my eyes to see even clearer. I see it all. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me. Say you're believing in me. You're believing in me.
In the next episode, the good cabin sole work continues, including filling in the areas to complete the panels. These little fill bits that I'm putting in is very, very satisfying, I can say. Now that I've actually had a good start on all of the panels, please like, subscribe, hit that bell and share. I'd really, really appreciate that.